Okay. Um, so let's get back to Europe for a second. And we know that the Napoleonic Wars lasted on and off for over a decade. At the end of the day, Napoleon loses, right? And the Congress of Vienna is meant to, it's a meeting where they come up to the peace terms of the war. And Austria, England, Russia, Prussia, and France now become the big five. They meet and they decide, well, we're going to put the king back in power in France, King Louis XVIII, who was King Louis XVI's brother. King Louis XVI's son died, so he's King Louis XVII, but he never really ruled. He's just kind of there to honor him. And then, so King Louis XVIII goes back, and basically they're trying to go back to the way that things were before the French Revolution. Spoiler alert, this is not going to work. The ideas of the French Revolution, Enlightenment ideas, are not going away just because these countries try and put a king back in power. They also wanted to try and create a balance of power. This will be a dominating feature of Europe in the 1800s. This attempt to have these five big countries each be equally powerful so that not one group gets too powerful. And they agreed that they would help each other, they will intervene in any problems that come up to make sure that these five countries stay in power. That idea was called conservatism, going back to the way things were before. There was another idea in Europe called liberalism. And liberalism is the idea of wanting to move forward and use Enlightenment ideas in governments. They believed that people should have basic rights respected by the government. They thought that people should be able to choose their leaders, and that there should be a balance of power within government, with there being a legislature and an executive, maybe a king, maybe a president, like in the US, but not one group with all the power, more of a shared power arrangement. Most of Europe's new middle class were liberal. They didn't want to go back to the old ways of the king. They didn't want a conservative movement. But the nobles and the kings, of course, did, because it meant they got to have more power. We also know that during the Napoleonic Wars, one of the ideas that was spread was this idea of nationalism, this intense national pride that the French had for themselves. Remember, they fought this war for their rights, not for their king. And we are French and we are proud. The other countries hear these ideas and they mimic them, but they say, we are Germans and we are proud. We are not French, but we kind of like that concept. We are Italian and we are proud. We're not French, but we like that concept. Austrians and English. And these ideas spread that way. Now, although Germany wasn't unified at this point, there was big, strong Prussia, and then a bunch of German states ruled by individual princes. They kind of felt like they were all the same people. And we're going to find that these people are going to start looking to form one big country, which would throw off the balance of power in Europe. And we're going to find the big five push back against. And in 1830, 15 small years after the Napoleonic Wars end, we're going to find that in 4 countries, they have revolutions or attempted revolutions or revolts. In France, King Louis XVIII had died in 1824. He had passed it on to a new king, King Charles X. He died without a son. And King Charles X would be deposed by his government in 1830 when he tries to censor the newspapers and limit freedoms of speech. Those ideas were still strong in France. And a new king named Louis Philippe, who I believe to be cousin of King Charles X, Louis Philippe is going to take over and create a constitutional monarchy. He's going to allow for a constitution and a king who follows the Constitution. In Belgium, and I want to look this up for us actually, just so we have a better idea of where Belgium is on the map. In Belgium, we're going to find that Belgium's a small country, okay, in the northern part of Europe, right above France, right below, or right to the southwest of the Netherlands. And we're going to find that Belgium was taken over by the Netherlands. Okay, Belgium was taken over by Netherlands. Let me try and find, here's a up close map of Belgium. Here's France, and here's the Netherlands. And when we look at this country in a map of Europe, we'll see that Belgium is this little country here. The Netherlands had taken them over, and they wanted their independence. The Belgian people felt closer to France. They felt more connected to France. They were Catholic. Their language was more French sounding, where the Dutch, the people from the Netherlands, felt more connected to Germany or England. Their language was more Germanic, which, by the way, English is a Germanic language with a lot of Latin in it as well. English is this very mixed language. Just as a fun side note, all the short words in English are largely German words, and the longer words are largely Latin words. And if you're a Spanish speaker, which I've worked really hard to try and become, you'll find that the Latin words in English are the same words in Spanish, just spelled and pronounced a little differently. So, German, good. Latin, excellent. Spanish, excelente. Latin, fabulous. Spanish, fabuloso, right? Latin, fantastic. Spanish, fantastico. We get the point. And then another fun point, I'm just getting off on a different tangent. Any English word that ends in ion or tion or sion, there is usually the exact same word in Latin and Spanish, just pronounced a little differently. I know I'm not a linguist or a teacher of language, but it's kind of fun to look at sometimes. So getting back to my point, Belgium has a rebellion against the Dutch. They get their own country. And Italy and Poland, who were currently being ruled by other countries, Poland was split in half between the Prussians and the Russians, and Italy was ruled by the Austrians. They both try and have rebellions to gain their independence, and they lose. But in 1840, we have 4 attempted revolutions or revolts. 2 are successful, the French and the Belgians succeed in their revolution, and 2 fail, the Italians and the Polish.